Dr. Kimberly Ellis. So we started this conversation last weekend. We started. You were riveting talking about Tulsa, and I think one of the things that I got excited about is that I feel like all of a sudden everyone was talking about Tulsa, which is huge. But I think that we also have to make sure that people understand what Tulsa really means and what it means in 2020.
That's right. That's right, Lynn, because, one of the things that I've discovered from watching America rediscover Tulsa is that it's sort of like I'm relieved, and it's also sort of painful. And there are also some myths that I feel the need to absolutely correct. When I started working on this project, it was 1998. I was a grad student just looking for a paper topic. I was studying the American West, and specifically the African American West, the Black West, if you will. And that led me to the Trail of Tears, and it led me to Oklahoma. In my personal family history, I was focused on the relationships between Native Americans and African Americans because that's a part of my family history, but it's a part of African American history and American history in general. So I learned about how there were some people who were enslaved, by some of the 5 civilized tribes called civilized for, really awful reasons. But those who were put on the Trail of Tears, there were also Black people who were intermarried with the Creek Nation members, with Cherokee members, and who were enslaved on paper but protected. And then there were some who were actually still, technically speaking, enslaved. And they went on the Trail of Tears into this wasteland of what was supposed to be Indian territory. Whereas we come to know, Indian territory became the state of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Something that Native Americans, statehood was something that Native Americans and African Americans actually did not want, because statehood was pushed by those who had come from the South and who had been disrespecting Indian sovereignty, who were trying to displace Native Americans and African Americans from their land from the very beginning. So Oklahoma, being instituted as a state, was also instituting the system of white supremacy and Jim Crow segregation. And that's exactly what they did in Tulsa. So they literally started to segregate their telephone booths. So 3 things to really understand about Tulsa as we go into the history. One is very light, because millions of Americans learned through popular culture. So I'm grateful for pop culture. Millions of Americans learned about Tulsa because of Watchmen debut in October 2019, right? They used what they called that segment of the Tulsa massacre. And I'll get to that massacre part first. But what the other popular culture element that people have learned and have now mythologized is that the Gap Band, the band that we all love, with Uncle Charlie Wilson, who made, Outstanding and the song You Dropped a Bomb on Me. First of all, the Gap Band, it's true. The Gap Band was literally known as the G.A.P. band, the Gap Band. And somehow along the way, it was always an acronym standing for Greenwood, Archer, and Pine Streets, the 3 very popular streets of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, now popularly referenced as Black Wall Street. So it's true. They were just repping their hometown and said, hey, we're the Greenwood, Archer, and Pine Street band, the Gap Band. Somehow along the way, the periods disappeared. And so a lot of people are shocked now. But one of the things that Uncle Charlie Wilson has had to demythologize is that, no, You Dropped a Bomb on Me is not about the Tulsa bomb.
It's not about that. Okay.
Simply a love song. And he said it was a love song about a young man who had fallen in love with an older woman, and she dropped a bomb on him and I think left him. Okay. So that's one thing. Then with regard to Black Wall Street, the mythology around Black Wall Street is that everybody was rich and, the money was just overflowing. And it's true. It was one of the wealthiest communities in the African America and America, period. But first of all, it was more likely called the Negroes' Wall Street at that time, from either a journalist that came from New York or also Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington did come to Oklahoma. He explored Arkansas and Oklahoma, and he was encouraged by the Black wealth that he saw. And we know he was down south trying to build up Tuskegee Institute. There was a Greenwood right next to Tuskegee Institute, and he wanted to use that kind of as a model. So he did encourage the Black businessmen and women and the wealthy people to like be more intentional as you create community. All right, so that's important in terms of the development of Greenwood. And then finally, with regard to like mythology and our placement around ideas, is this idea of the Tulsa massacre. Well, just like my discussion with around Juneteenth, the one thing we don't want to do as we discuss the story is to reinforce ideas of Black passivity, because these African-American war veterans who had just come from, you know, World War II, right?
Mhm.
And
You know, let me get you to do this. Hold that thought. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll finish that up in just a minute when the Lynne Hayes Freeland Show continues. You don't want to miss this.